Well, this morning, the war of words continues between President Trump and Omarosa. The former White House aide has accused the president of using the N-word. The White House cannot guarantee there's no audio recording of it.
Plus, a scathing Pennsylvania grand jury report is revealing decades of child abuse allegations against more than 300 accused predator priests.
And the death toll is rising after a major bridge collapse in Italy. Emergency workers are clearing wreckage and debris, hoping to find any possible survivors. Well, good morning to you. It's Wednesday, August 15th. I'm Richard Louie alongside Francis Rivera. Good morning to all of you, as well as Louis Bergdorf. Eamon and Yasmin have the morning off. We're going to start with this, the latest results of yesterday's primaries in 4 states, and a surprise in Minnesota's Republican primary for governor, as Hennepin County Commissioner Jeff Johnson easily defeated Tim Pawlenty, a 2008 presidential candidate and former 2-term governor. Johnson will face Congressman Tim Walz, who won the hotly contested Democratic primary in November. Then in Wisconsin, Democrat Tony Evers won 41% of the vote in a crowded 8-way primary for governor. The state school superintendent is up against Republican Governor Scott Walker, who is seeking a 3rd term.
In Connecticut, 2006 U.S. Senate nominee Ned Lamont claimed the Democratic nomination for governor. This as Republicans nominated Bob Stefanowski, a former GE executive who was a registered Democrat shortly before announcing his bid. And history was made last night as Democratic candidate for Vermont Governor Christine Hallquist became the first transgender nominee of a major political party. She is up against incumbent Republican Governor Phil Scott. Meanwhile, Minnesota Democrat Ilhan Omar won the Democratic primary for a Minneapolis House seat, which means the first 2 Muslim women are likely to join Congress this fall.
And we have 3 new polls that show President Trump struggling to gain approval for his job performance, with his net negative approval rating in the double digits in each of the polls. Negative 13 points according to Quinnipiac, negative 11 points in CNN's poll, and negative 17 points in Gallup's weekly tracking survey. Asked by the Quinnipiac poll whether they like Trump as a person, 31% of voters said yes, while 59% dislike him. On the president's Twitter habits, 26% believe he should continue tweeting, while 66% think he should stop.
Now the latest polling about the Russia probe, 58% believe the investigation into Russian efforts is a serious matter, while 37% told the CNN poll that they think it's a way to discredit President Trump. 70% believe Trump should testify under oath in Robert Mueller's probe. 25% say he should not. And 56% feel that the president attempted to interfere with the investigation, while 38% say he has not. While a majority, 56%, think that things the president has said publicly about the investigation are either mostly or completely false, 37% feel he has been mostly truthful.
And a shocking grand jury report is rocking the Catholic Church from Pennsylvania to the Vatican this morning. New details reveal the molestation of more than 1,000 children by hundreds of predator priests in Pennsylvania. And the abuse allegedly was covered up for decades by senior church officials. NBC News correspondent Ann Thompson has more.
In searing, damning language, the grand jury report revealed the dark secrets of the Catholic Church in Pennsylvania. Priests were raping little boys and girls, and the men of God who were responsible for them did nothing. They hid it all.
It was child sexual abuse, including rape, committed by grown men, priests, against children.
The report found over 1,000 child victims identified in the church's own records. The alleged crimes often described as inappropriate contact or boundary issues.
I am so angry.
Julianne Bort says she was molested as a teen. When she came forward in 2002, she says the church said it was hiring a private investigator.
I found out today that it wasn't him that they were looking at. They were looking at me.
The report finding a pattern among the bishops and church leaders. The main thing was not to help children, but to avoid scandal. It names more than 300 predator priests in 6 dioceses, from one end of the state to the other, home to more than 1.7 million Catholics. Almost every instance of abuse too old to be prosecuted. But the investigation did result in 2 priests being criminally charged with sexually assaulting children during the past decade. From the diocese, apologies.
I ask you, the church asks you for forgiveness.
But for some, words are not enough.
People want total transparency. They want the bishops to report what happened, why it happened, and how they're going to make sure that it never happens again.
Many of those same bishops and their past handling of abuse cases are implicated in this investigation, including Cardinal Donald Wuerl, the former Bishop of Pittsburgh. Wuerl, now in Washington, says he acted with diligence, concern for victims, and to prevent future abuse.
Just a shocking story. Our thanks to Ann Thompson for that report.
The White House is defending President Trump's recent comments about former aide Omarosa Manigault-Newman. On Twitter yesterday morning, Trump lashing out, calling Omarosa a dog. Here's what the press secretary had to say about that.
The president has said similar things about a number of individuals, certainly that are not African American or any other minority. I can simply talk to you about the policies and the person that the president is. I think if, again, the person that a lot of his critics say he is, certainly wouldn't have been in business with him for decades. Certainly you wouldn't have had Bill and Hillary Clinton. They attended his wedding. I think that he has made a number of comments about plenty of people, and to try to single that out to one group is frankly silly, because I think if you did a comparison, he's probably got a lot more nasty things out there about some other people.
The president called you a dog this morning. What's your reaction?
I think that it just shows you that if he would say that publicly, what else would he say about me privately? He has absolutely no respect for women, for African Americans, as evidenced by him instructing the chief of staff to lock me for 2 hours in the Situation Room, to harass me, to threaten me and say that things could get very ugly for me and that there would be damage to my reputation. He is unfit to be in this office and to serve as the president of the United States.
Let's put up the
Republican Senator Jeff Flake is weighing in on the president's tweet as well, writing, "This kind of language is unbecoming of a president of the United States. There is no excuse for it, and Republicans should not be okay with it." Meanwhile, the press secretary yesterday also could not confirm whether or not President Trump has ever used the N-word, as Omarosa has claimed.
Can you stand at the podium and guarantee the American people they'll never hear Donald Trump utter the N-word on a recording in any context?
I can't guarantee anything, but I can tell you that the president addressed this question directly. I can tell you that I've never heard it.
Well, now the Trump campaign has taken legal action against Omarosa in the form of an arbitration complaint, claiming she violated a 2016 confidentiality agreement. The former reality TV star turned White House official admits to signing the contract with the campaign, and she tells our Katie Tur that she doesn't believe it's been breached. There's also the issue of those White House secrecy agreements. Omarosa says that she did not sign that particular contract, but not every White House official was as forthcoming.
Have you signed an NDA?
I'm not going to get into the back and forth on who has signed an NDA here at the White House. I can tell you that it's common in a lot of places for employees to sign NDAs, including in government, particularly anyone with a security clearance.
All right, let me ask you what it says about the expressions of loyalty or lack thereof for people who work behind that wall. Why do people need to be contractually obligated to forever after, in perpetuity, never say anything negative about the president, any member of his family, any product they should produce? Why is that necessary?
Look, again, it's common in a lot of
corporations to protect the corporate interests. What's the particular necessity?
It's also, despite contrary opinion, it's actually very normal, and every administration prior to the Trump administration has had NDAs particularly specific for anyone that had a security clearance. This White House is certainly no longer.
All right, here's the thing. Quick fact check on the claim you just heard that NDAs are standard at the White House. Well, that's not true, according to past administration officials there. NBC News is told that there are, of course, restrictions on releasing highly classified or sensitive information, but those things would fall under a security clearance and not an NDA. I want to bring in now from Washington, senior writer at Roll Call, Neil Lesniewski. Let's talk about this. In some terms, we've heard the word snowball when it comes to these recordings, these claims from Omarosa that could turn into an avalanche, by some estimates, could bring down the president. Do you agree with that assertion? And if anything, what kind of legal trouble does this could this mean for the White House and the president?
Well, I think that the first question is really going to be how much
of what Omarosa is saying on television and in her new book is actually, even beyond that, what she's already told to the special counsel's office, to Robert Mueller and company, because of the revelation that she's now made that she has been in contact with them. So the question of whether or not some of this is unsavory versus how much of this is potentially a legal matter or something that, frankly, if the Democrats take back control of the House in 2018 or for 2019, whether or not we're going to see Omarosa being called to testify before the House Judiciary Committee or something, that's kind of where this could turn from just sort of a normal circus into something beyond that.
And Niels, it could be a circus of security potentially here, with that recording making it out, with the Chief of Staff, Leon Panetta, saying, hey, look, this is a breach of Situation Room security. What do we know now, just days into this, in terms of White House security?
Well, remember that there was this prohibition that was supposedly imposed on cell phones, personal cell phones in the West Wing. We're not entirely sure yet exactly how much Omarosa was recording where, but it does raise all sorts of questions about what sort of electronic equipment may have been available or may have been in secure locations that could theoretically have been hacked by some outside entity. The other thing, of course, is, you know, if there are in fact recordings that Omarosa has of all sorts of other meetings, back to the point about Robert Mueller, that could all be evidence if there's any sort of a criminal proceeding or other sort of proceeding that goes on. Those may all be subpoenaed.
Yeah, lots of folks wondering what is Omarosa's editorial calendar, and we will all be following it. Niels Lesniewski, thank you, sir, from Roll Call. So ahead for you. We're following the very latest on the deadly bridge collapse in Italy. Overnight, workers have been digging through rubble there, hoping to find some survivors.
And later, closing arguments are set to begin in the Paul Manafort trial after his legal team rested their case without calling any witnesses, including Manafort, to the stand. We'll have those stories and a check of weather when we come right back. Welcome back. At least 37 people are dead following a catastrophic bridge collapse in Italy yesterday in what one eyewitness describes as an apocalyptic scene. The images out of Genoa are more akin to a movie showing a huge section of the 1960s built Morante Bridge missing. Having fallen more than 300 feet onto a densely inhabited area below, was made up of shopping centers, factories, and some homes. Dozens of cars and heavy trucks were on the bridge at the time. Officials say one of the bridge's pillars collapsed during a torrential rainstorm, and a witness tells Italian media that lightning struck the bridge before the collapse. Authorities also add that work was being done on the bridge's foundation at the time. Several hundred rescue workers continue to search for survivors, and Italian media reports that at least 11 people have been rescued from the rubble. An investigation has been launched. Hopefully that number will rise as far as those rescued.
Absolutely. Relations between NATO allies, the United States and Turkey, they continue to dissolve. Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan is now calling for Turks to boycott U.S. electronics, including calling out Apple specifically. Ironically, as the New York Times points out, 2 years ago when Erdogan appealed to his supporters during a coup attempt, he used FaceTime. That's the Apple video chat app. He is also frequently seen with an iPhone. It comes amid an ongoing standoff between Washington and Ankara regarding Turkey's ongoing detainment of U.S. pastor Andrew Brunson. The U.S. has sanctioned 2 top Turkish officials so far over the situation, and last week increased sanctions on Turkish metals. Yesterday, Turkey responded by raising tariffs on a host of U.S. goods, including tobacco to 60%, U.S. cars to 120%, and U.S. alcohol to a whopping 140%. All of this comes as the Turkish economy continues to be in a free fall, with the Turkish lira falling to record lows, accelerating inflation, and investor selling spree of Turkish debt. Experts say that Erdogan's economic policies and management are mainly to blame for the crisis. Although Erdogan has repeatedly blamed foreign influence, the United States does not currently have an ambassador to Turkey.
All right, let's get a check on your weather now with NBC meteorologist Bill Cairns. Bill, you're tracking some rain in the middle of the country this morning.
Yeah, that's where the flash flood threat is today. Good morning to you, Lewis. Yesterday at this time, we had a lot of heavy rain around the Finger Lakes in central New York. And here's some of the damage that was done. Some of the rainfall totals were 6 inches in about 1 to 2 hours. The area of Lodi was hit kind of one of the hardest near Seneca Lake. That's where they had significant flooding. I mean, we just look how high that water was. And there were some water rescues that were needed. So we're going to do it again today, unfortunately. This time we're mostly focused and worried about the Ozarks and northern portions of Arkansas. We've had numerous rounds of heavy rain the last couple of days, and new thunderstorms are now moving from Oklahoma towards areas around Fort Smith into northern Oklahoma or northern Arkansas, and then southern portions of Missouri, too, are getting a pretty good from Springfield right up 44. And that's heading for St. Louis as you go through your morning. So here's where the heavy rainfall will be. The area of red is up to 2 inches. So there's a possibility here, that area between Fort Smith and Little Rock. That's why we have the best chance for flash flooding here. This is just going to be a soaking rain with storms later today from southern Illinois through Indianapolis. Indianapolis, you start dry. You'll drive home likely with some rain and thunderstorms around. Same goes for Chicago, too. So let's try to time this out. This is at 8 a.m. this morning. So that area from St. Louis to Springfield continue with that thunderstorm threat. Notice it's spotty in northern Illinois. As we go through the lunch hour, a little bit of showers for Peoria to Indianapolis. That heavy rain in St. Louis coming to an end. Chicago still dry by your lunch hour, but as we head towards the afternoon drive, hit and miss showers and storms, even trying to sneak up there almost into southern portions of Wisconsin. So again, it's not going to be like a all-out, all-day rain in those areas, but you'll get some periods of rain. Forecast finally a dry day from New York to Baltimore, Philadelphia, D.C., Raleigh, Charlotte, Atlanta included. It's very summer-like, too, because it's rained so much. There's a lot of ground moisture, so it'll feel pretty humid out there this afternoon. But I don't think anyone will complain with a nice 84 degrees today in Boston. And tomorrow also looks really nice, guys, for the eastern seaboard. Next chance of rain for the East Coast won't be till Friday afternoon, evening, with typical summertime storms. So we're kind of out of that murky pattern that we
need a break from that. We got a pounding yesterday around here, yes. Bill. Thank you.
That's right. Once we can get rid of murkiness, we like that. Still ahead, a good old-fashioned baseball brawl, and perhaps the most unique way of staying cool in the summer you will ever see. That's coming up next in sports. We're back in a bit.
Good to be with you. I'm Frances Rivera alongside Richard Louie and Louis Bergdorf. Eamon and Yasmin have the morning off. It is the bottom of the hour, and here are your top stories. The war of words between President Trump and former aide Omarosa is escalating this morning. The president is pushing back at her allegation that he's been caught on tape using the N-word. NBC News White House correspondent Kristen Walker has the very latest.
On Twitter earlier today.
Can you stand at the podium and guarantee the American people they'll never hear Donald Trump utter the N-word on a recording in any context?
I can't guarantee anything, but I can tell you that the president addressed this question directly. I can tell you that I've never heard it.
Just to be clear, you can't guarantee it.
Look, I haven't been in every single room. I can tell you the president has addressed this directly.
A defiant President Trump denies using the N-word and tweeted that Apprentice producer Mark Burnett told him there are no tapes. I don't have that word in my vocabulary and never have. But that's the looming question after ousted top advisor Omarosa Manigault Newman said she heard an outtake from the first season of The Apprentice with Mr. Trump allegedly using that slur.
How many times did you hear him use the N-word?
Multiple times.
And Mr. Trump escalating his attacks, calling his former apprentice a crazed, crying lowlife, adding, "Good work by General Kelly for quickly firing that dog," a racially charged term that sparked fierce public criticism and this firm response.
It just shows you that if he would say that publicly, what else would he say about me privately? He has absolutely no respect for women, for African Americans.
It's not just Manigault Newman. The president has used dehumanizing terms to take aim at a range of political rivals. But his recent attacks, questioning the intelligence of African Americans in politics and pop culture, have come under scrutiny.
This has absolutely nothing to do with race and everything to do with the president calling out someone's lack of integrity.
But Manigault Newman says a new recording, not confirmed by NBC News, backs up her claims. She says it captures a discussion during the 2016 campaign about the alleged N-word tape with other aides, including with then spokesperson Katrina Pearson, who seemed to address the charges.
Yeah, he said it. He's embarrassed.
Well, thanks to Kristen Walker for that report. Well, spokesperson Katrina Pearson says that the tape you heard there is being taken out of context. Apprentice producer Mark Burnett has not responded to NBC's request for comment.
Omarosa also made a claim to our own Katie Tur that, if true, would be of interest to Special Counsel Bob Mueller. Take a listen.
You were instructed, according to your book, to bring up the emails at every point you could at the end of the 2016
that's
campaign.
correct.
Hillary Clinton's emails.
Yes, that was our talker.
Did Donald Trump know about those emails before they came out?
Absolutely.
He knew about them?
Yes.
He knew what was coming out before WikiLeaks
Yes.
released them? You're saying Donald Trump had a back channel?
I didn't say that, you did, but I will say that
How did you
I am
know
going
about
to
him, then?
expose the corruption that went on in the campaign and in the White House. I'm going to continue to blow the whistle on all of this.
It's not true. He didn't know. I know he didn't know.
And if he did?
I know it even beyond being his lawyer.
If he knew, is it a problem?
No. But he didn't know. He didn't know.
I hear you.
I'm not even going to get into the hypothetical. He did not know.
Well, Omarosa did not offer any evidence to back up that claim, and it is not in her book. Omarosa also claiming in her book, though, that the president used a disparaging nickname to describe his education secretary, that is Ditzy DeVos. It allegedly happened last year after DeVos was booed during a visit to the historically black Bethune-Cookman University. The former White House aide claims DeVos left town early and left her stranded in a hotel. Omarosa writes, quote, "Once I returned and told Trump about what had happened, he shook his head in disgust." According to Omarosa, the president said, quote, "She is Ditzy DeVos. What do you expect? In a very short period of time, I will get rid of her. Believe me." Well, the Department of Education responded in a statement saying, quote, "This disgraced former White House employee is peddling lies for profit. The book is a joke, as are the false claims she's making about Secretary DeVos."
And closing arguments are set to begin this morning in the trial of Paul Manafort after his defense team rested its case without calling a single witness. Attorneys for President Trump's former campaign chairman did make arguments for acquittal yesterday, which the judge denied. Manafort, who has pleaded not guilty to tax evasion, bank fraud, and money laundering, spoke for the first time during the trial yesterday. The judge called him to the podium to make sure he understood that he had the right to testify if he wanted. When asked if he wanted to testify, Manafort simply replied, "No, sir." Now, speaking to reporters outside the courthouse, Manafort's lead lawyer said his team did not call any witnesses because they do not believe that the government has offered sufficient evidence to prove its case. The case is expected to go to the jury later today.
And joining us from Washington, senior writer at Roll Call, Niels Lesniewski, back with us. So, Niels, building on what Lewis was just reporting on, what is expected here in the Manafort trial? Both sides have now settled. Do we expect long deliberation, or might we have a decision from jury very soon?
Well, it's good to be back. We're heading into closing arguments in the courthouse in Alexandria, Virginia today. And it's not clear how quickly the jury might come back or might be deliberating for after the closing arguments are over with. But what's going to be really key today is what exactly do Mr. Manafort's lawyers try and sell to the jury in terms of the government not having proven its case. They didn't put on any witnesses, and so there's this question of whether or not the real play here is even for the trial itself, or whether Manafort and company are sort of playing a long game down the road for a possible presidential pardon from Donald Trump eventually.
All right, Niels, back to what's become a two-day revelation from Omarosa. Yeah. You heard that conversation with Omarosa and Katie Tur, where Omarosa said that the staffers in the White House should be very worried about that. What are you hearing from the staffers inside? What are they talking about, and how worried are they, if at all?
Well, the worry really has got to be about whether or not Omarosa knows anything, like we said before, that would be of interest to Bob Mueller. More than sort of this, President Trump makes statements from time to time, many of which are not on secret recordings. There are plenty of things that he's said right out in the open that are probably outside the boundaries of normal political discourse. So that's not unusual. It's whether or not there's anything that is of sort of legal interest to Mueller And the other thing I would just throw in is that the Senate is actually coming back into session today because they canceled part of the August recess. So unfortunately, if you're a United States Senator who's a Republican, you're going to be answering questions about Omarosa this afternoon.
Well, on that point, we have Omarosa, who's been out of the White House since her firing. It's been a while. We also understand when it comes to what she had access to, that they were not with high-level senior officials, so that her access or with information or possible other recordings wouldn't reach at that level. So in essence, would it be, in this case, kind of just, just conversations that may not really come out to anything, especially with her credibility at stake?
It's entirely possible that she doesn't have a lot that's actually of interest. And the other thing, of course, is with the way this White House and the way this presidency has been going, I wouldn't be surprised if a week from now we have moved on from Omarosa, that, she does her round of television interviews and she starts her book tour in earnest. But barring there being any new revelations from her, we may be on to the next controversy.
All right.
Certainly possible. Neil Zelensky, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Still ahead, Turkey ramps up its ongoing diplomatic spat with the United States. We'll go live to Istanbul for the latest steps leaders there are taking amid its ongoing currency crisis.
Plus, rescue crews in Italy racing against the clock there to find survivors in that horrific bridge collapse. The challenges they face in trying to find anyone who may still be alive. And welcome back. At least 37 people are dead following a horrific bridge collapse in Italy. This happened yesterday in the port city of Genoa when the structure suddenly came crashing down in the middle of a storm. NBC News' Lucy Kavanaugh has more on the ground for us.
This video capturing the horror. The moment a massive bridge collapses during a powerful storm, sending cars plunging, witnesses stunned.
I got out of the car and I saw people running away from the bridge, and some people, there was even a guy with his face covered in blood.
Hundreds of first aid responders rushing to the scene, digging through tons of concrete and steel. This firefighter carrying out one rescue, lowering a survivor down from the bridge. What is the biggest danger for any potential survivors?
Well, up to now, there is no gas leaks or anything. If there is any survivors, they are trapped in maybe some confined space.
The bridge seen here before the collapse stretched over residential buildings and the water. This is how it looks. That green truck avoiding disaster by inches. Officials say as many as 38 vehicles were on the 50-year-old Morandi Bridge, which is part of a main road to France, when a 260-foot span began crumbling. Tomorrow is a major summer holiday, many traveling on the bridge to get to nearby beaches and mountains. Officials say work was underway on the bridge's foundation when the collapse happened and are launching an investigation to find out what sparked the disaster, which for dozens of drivers came without warning.
And thanks to Lucy Kavanaugh for that report.
And Turkish President Erdogan has called for a boycott of U.S.-made electronics and announced a new set of tariffs on a number of American goods, escalating both the economic and diplomatic tensions between the two NATO allies. CNBC's Willem Marks joins us live from Istanbul, Turkey, with more. Willem, what's the latest? I know the lira has made a rebound as well.
Yeah, a little bit of a rebound this morning. That's on the back of some regulations, restrictions issued by the banking regulator here. Quite technical stuff to do with foreign currency swaps. But in terms of those announcements this morning on tariffs, those are pretty significant. If you look at products like tobacco, alcohol, cars, cosmetics, rice, fruit, the one that will really potentially have an impact on a U.S. industry is tobacco. They send about $50 million worth of tobacco products from the U.S. to Turkey each year. That's in the context, though, of more than $22 billion worth of trade in goods and services between these two countries. Yesterday, President Erdogan doubling down on his rhetoric, talking about the need to avoid iPhones, to buy Samsungs or even a local company instead. And in terms of the latest dispute between them, an update on that man, Andrew Brunson, the American pastor who's been held here for almost 2 years, most recently under house arrest. We had a chance to speak to his lawyer a few moments ago, who told us that his latest appeal to have that house arrest lifted had been denied by a Turkish court in another city, Izmir. He will, at the moment, still face charges on espionage related to that 2016 failed coup attempt unless, of course, there is some kind of intervention from the White House. They had set today as a deadline for him to be released. Otherwise, they had threatened further punitive actions against Turkey.
Sure, going to hear a lot more about this story as it develops. Willem Marks, live from Istanbul. Thanks so much.
And we've got more. President Trump set to head to one hotspot of the elites that he continuously denounces at his rallies. The reasoning behind the president's visit there.
Plus, after being separated by roughly 100 votes, finally a winner in the highly contested Republican gubernatorial primary in Kansas. Details on who came out on top. Plus, Bill Cairns is back with another Check Our Forecast.
We're getting a first look at images of girls who have been separated from their parents.
Is where the details lie.
All are now out of the cave, alive and safe.
Where the facts are buried. And the only way to uncover the whole story.
We have news just breaking tonight.
Is to dig deeper than anyone else.
Welcome back. So a week after Kansas's Republican gubernatorial primary concluded in a neck-and-neck finish, incumbent Governor Jeff Colyer has conceded to the race to Secretary of State Chris Kobach. Well, Colyer made that announcement last night, saying that he would endorse Kobach in November's general election. The governor made the decision after the review of some provisional ballots did not yield enough votes for him to overcome the 110-vote lead Kobach had over him. Well, Kobach will now face the Democratic nominee Laura Kelly in the election. State officials are still reviewing the submitted signatures from independent Greg Orman to see if he will be on the ballot as well.
The president will attend a fundraiser for his re-election in the Hamptons this weekend, hosted by Howard Lorber, a Manhattan developer and executive chairman of Nathan's Famous, the hot dog company many of you know. Bloomberg, citing two people familiar with that event, reports the roundtable with supporters and a luncheon will take place at Lorber's Southampton home this Friday. That fundraiser will benefit Trump Victory. It's a joint committee for Trump's 2020 campaign in the RNC. Now, Lorber was a top economic advisor during Trump's 2016 campaign, was appointed as chairman of the board of trustees for the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum by the president last year. Trump has described Lorber as one of his two best friends. According to Bloomberg, the two also traveled to Moscow together to explore business opportunities in 1996.
Let's get a check on your weather now with NBC meteorologist Bill Cairns. Bill, in sports, we talked about it being the dog days of summer in this Miami first base coach putting lettuce in his helmet in order to stave off the heat.
Is that going to catch on?
You say, I hope so. I think it's probably a good tactic, but you say the heat
Go for
is
a jog with a piece of lettuce on your head? Yeah.
That's right.
That'd be interesting. Yeah, the heat's with us. We were soggy, and now the heat's in many spots. The one big, if we're going to get any major breaking news stories from the weather today, we have to watch what happens here in the Ozarks, especially this area between Fayetteville and Little Rock. Moderate risk of some flash flooding, especially the first half of today through this morning. Then we'll extend that towards Indianapolis, St. Louis, Paducah later today. Also, New York City and the 5 boroughs, a little portion of Long Island, and even in the areas of New Jersey or in Essex County are now under heat advisories. It's just very humid. And then when you get out the full sun later today, the heat indices could get up there just hot enough to make it feel kind of uncomfortable. So we're hot and we're humid. Oppressive heat continues, especially in the south. Today, it'll feel like about 93 in New York, D.C. 92, Norfolk 93. So at least the sun will be out. This is a little much. 99 in Wilmington today and 93 in Charlotte. We'll do it again on Thursday. Not much of a breeze either to kind of mix things up a little bit. Philly will be like 97. It'll feel like D.C. will be 91. And then we'll be pretty hot and humid Friday, too, but then thunderstorms will kick through and cool things off. And once that front goes through, it gets to be a pretty nice weekend. New York, 86, 82. Boston, 80, 75 on Sunday. Even Philly will be nice at 85 on Sunday. And D.C. looks very enjoyable Sunday with a temperature of 82, and you notice the humidity levels will be lower. So the forecast concerns today if you're traveling, we could have some problems at the airports this afternoon at O'Hare, St. Louis, especially as we go throughout this morning into the afternoon. We're okay in Dallas. Atlanta looks pretty good for all your travel, and much of Florida looks good. We're still warm in the West. We haven't talked a lot about it. We haven't had a lot of breaking news with any big, new, huge fires, but there's still plenty burning out there and a lot of poor air quality. But it's good that we haven't had anything. You know, we went about, it's like 2-3 weeks in a row of just talking about one fire story after another in the West.
Yeah, really tough. And Bill, you forgot, it's cabbage over the head, not
lettuce.
lettuce.
The lettuce, it's the cabbage.
Cabbage fits
what
the noggin
if you
better.
Use lettuce? What's the difference between cabbage?
It'll wilt. It'll go away. Cabbage fits better.
Cabbage is stronger. Okay.
Thanks.
Kale.
Still to come, Axios' Mike Allen has a look at this morning's One Big Thing. And coming up on Morning Joe, an historic night for women and minorities following yesterday's primaries across the country. A full breakdown of the results and what they may signal for President Trump heading towards the midterms.
Plus, the latest on the White House efforts to control the fallout over former aide Omarosa's continued allegations against President Trump and the backlash he's facing for going on the attack against her. Morning Joe, moments away.